Good day, all of you. Thank you very much for organizer to invitation our institute to participate in this conference. And I want to talk about the legal status of Tibetan medicine nowadays in Russia, status of institutions and specialists of Tibetan medicine, and its integration in international health system. Please, next slide. Buddhism penetrated to Buryat Republic and to Russia beginning from the early 17th century. It was brought by Buddhist missionaries from Tibet and Mongolia for the short period of time. Buddhism and Buddhist monasteries took an important place in spiritual, cultural, and social life of the Buryat population. Tibetan medicine was one of the important factors of this phenomenon. Next slide. At the turn of the 19th-20th centuries in Tsarist Russia, Tibetan medical system was experiencing the peak of prosperity because they functioned medical faculties, Mamba Datsans, at the largest Buryat Buddhist monasteries. In the early 20th century, the main schools of Tibetan medicine were Mamba Datsans and at Gusinozersky, Tsugolsky, Aginskaya, Atsagatsky, and Chelutai temples. There appeared many learned Buryat Lamas, approximately 800 people. They translated many important medical treatises from Tibetan and composed their own works, dictionaries, textbooks. Buryat Buddhist temples and lamas were engaged in the production of multi-component drugs, created their own prescriptions of medicines based on local raw materials. Among them, we can mention Kushok Hambulama Agvan Darjiv, the founder of Atsagats Mamba Datsan, Kalsan Jimba Dilgirov, Iraltuyev, Yondonov, and else. Next slide. The most well-known of them can be called two brothers, Alexander and Peter Badmaev. They studied medicine in Buryat monastery and later popularized Tibetan medicine in Russia, having acquainted the Tsarist court with the effective methods of healing. Particularly known is Peter Badmaev, a doctor, political and public figure, translator of the canonic treatise of Tibetan medicine, Zhutshi, into Russian. Peter Badmaev was a prominent practitioner of Tibetan medicine with excellent political connections in Russian imperial court. Peter Badmaev treated many Russian noblemen, famous persons, and ordinary citizens with the methods of Tibetan medicine. The population of the imperial capital of Russia learned about the effectiveness of treatment methods of Tibetan medicine through his deep knowledge and activities. Ambitions and interests of Badmaev extended far beyond medicine. He was a strong supporter of the Russian rush to the Eastern Asia. One of his projects was the training of Russian cultural agents in the Mongolian world and Tibet from the Aga Buryat youth, who were educated in the gymnasium he created and the St. Petersburg University. Among these Buryat scholars, it is necessary to mention Gambajab Tsibikov, Tsiben Jamsrano, Bazar Baradin. Tsibikov carried out the first perfectly documented expedition to Tibet. Jamsarano and Baradin created a system of modern Mongolian and Buryat science and education almost 100 years ago. Last year, there was a celebration of the 95th anniversary of the Buryat Scientific Committee. I took part in the publication of the documents from the archive, and I discovered that Jamsarano and Baradin paid the great attention to scientific study of Tibetan medicine and its integration into the Soviet health care system. Unfortunately, these attempts were repressed soon and revived only 70 years later. And I believe that this everlasting interest to Tibetan medicine of Buryat scientists is also the heritage of Peter Badmaev. Next slide. The heritage of Tibetan medicine becomes the object of scientific research since the end of the first half of the 20th century. It was studied by specialists and in various fields: Orientalists, philologists, historians, pharmacists, biologists, clinicians, and so on. Systemic academic research of the heritage of Tibetan medicine started in 1966 at the Buryat Scientific Center in the Department of Social Studies of our Institute for Mongolian, Buddhist, and Tibetan Studies, with the study of the experience of old Buryat lamas of using natural raw materials in traditional Tibetan medicine, and on this basis effective medicines based on them were created. The scientists of this institute have created new integrative medical technologies for treatment and prevention of some common diseases, as well as effective and safe medicines from ecologically pure raw materials of Siberian region. These created medicines were patented and certified, but they have not been licensed for industrial production. Next slide. The accumulated results of researchers found practical application in the creation of the Center of the Oriental Medicine in Ulan-Ude. This center is the only state institution of Russia for 30 years working with the use of the methods of Tibetan medicine. This center provides medical services to the population from all over the Russia. The right for carrying these activities is certified by the state license. In Russia, the most common Oriental medicine embraces Chinese, Tibetan, Mongolian, Buryat, Kalmyk, Ayurvedic systems of medicine. While the term Tibetan medicine has disappeared from official documents, giving way to the term traditional medicine. Next slide. The practice of integrating traditional medicine into the system of the Russian healthcare has revealed the following problems. First of all, connect with the process of formulating and development of consensual and uniform standards. The necessity of unification of terminology for creating common conceptual and legal basis, developing joint standards of diagnostic and treatment methods of raw materials used in medicines, the necessity of development of professional educational program of different levels. The future development of traditional Oriental medicine in Russian Federation depends on the solution of several large complex problems. First of all, this is the problem of unsolved legal status of traditional medicine in Russia, including it into the official medical system. For the second, the importance of withdrawal of sanctions for the distribution and import of medicines based on Tibetan formulas. But the third, founding the basis for educational programs for teaching doctors of traditional medicine. Next slide. All these problems arose with the adoption of the federal law number 323 called on the fundamentals of protecting the health of citizens in the Russian Federation. This law significantly limited the legal status of traditional medicine in Russia in general, with all negative implications arising from it. The adoption of this law opposed it to the official European medicine, which is strictly regulated by the states through a legislative framework. This situation means that according to this law, organization of traditional medicine, specialists and medicines cannot be licensed and cannot be controlled by the state institutions, and that is why the activities are not legal. Traditional medicine is equated to folk medicine, to the not a scholarly system, traditional folk healing. The need for legalization of traditional methods of treatment of Oriental medicine facilitated the unification of efforts of scientists, doctors, and politicians, and promotions the regulatory and legal issues of Tibetan medicines in the legislative field. Thus, for the past 5 years, the state parliament, Duma, has held roundtables on the topic of legal regulation of the perspective of the development of traditional folk and Oriental medicine in the Russian Federation. Next slide. As a result of those, in the creation in the state parliament of the expert committee on traditional medicine. The work of this committee is aimed at changing the existing laws and regulations, like the federal law, and on the circulation of medicines, for including phytotherapy, hirudotherapy, and homeopathy into the register of specialties that were excluded earlier from it, as well as to decide the problem of restoration of the Federal Scientific Clinical Experimental Center for Traditional Methods of Diagnosis and Treatment that has been closed according to this law. The committee has worked out a special plan for the integration of traditional medicine into the modern medical health care system and has passed it to the Ministry of Health of the Russian Federation. The main demand of this document is to include methods of traditional medicine, phytotherapy, manual therapy, reflexology, pulse diagnostic into the standards of modern medical care and to add the specialties, phytotherapist, homeopath, traditional medicine doctor, to the nomenclature of specialists with a high medical and pharmaceutical education. This will give to the doctors the right for carrying on their work officially and legally. This expert committee under the State Duma is trying to develop a new mechanism for accelerated certification of medicines and for creating new special pharmacopoeia for traditional medicine. Next slide. Successful realization and implementation of these tasks connected with official recognition of the legal status of traditional medicine will provide for effective integration of the legacy of Tibetan medicine into modern Russian healthcare program and will give a new impetus to the scientific research of Oriental medical system in general and particularly of the Tibetan medicine. Next slide. The formation of the regulatory framework, first of all, should be based on knowledge base. The scientists of Institute for Mongolian, Buddhist and Tibetan Studies formed this database and created such sites. This is a great collection of Tibetan medicine literature that is preserved at this institute, and electronic catalog of this collection is completed. All texts were identified and attributed. The description included genre affiliations, author, place of origin, colophon, detailed annotation. Some of the texts have been translated into Russian or transliterated. All text titles and other related information are given in standard Latin transliterations and Cyrillic transcriptions. This is done with the purpose to make it the main basis for the future integration of various medicinal informational resources. The database Tibetan Sources of Traditional Medicine comprises the electronic catalog, translations and transliterations of the selected text indexes created at the academic and research centers of Russia. Now it's used as the basis of specialized digital libraries. Next slide. This is an example of the database input on the website of the Center for Oriental Manuscripts and Xylographs. Next slide. This is description of medical text in the database. There is a search engine that allows convenient retrieving of interesting text from the database. Next slide. Medical texts are structured into the major semantic groups of genres. History of medicine, primary sources, comments on the primary sources, the prescription references, manual therapeutic procedures, work of pharmacology, medical terminological dictionaries, bibliographical and references literature. Text contains the list of received medical doctrines, medical treatises from Buddhist canon, ritual medical texts. Next slide. Computer-aided database Tibetan medicine. It contains information on medical feedstock materials, the receipts of medicines, the nosology of Tibetan medicine. The database consists of the following four main data sets: Handbook of the Diseases in Tibetan Medicine, Materia Medica of Tibetan Medicine, the Catalog of Medicinal Raw Materials, Handbook of Receipts, Dictionary of Medicinal Ingredients in the Tibetan language. Content in based on Kumpandu-Dzi. Data sets are linked at the level of the data structure and software. Next slide. Terminological studies of Tibetan-Mongolian medicine. Tibetan-Mongolian Russian glossary of Tibetan medicinal tomes with Sanskrit and Latin parallels is based on researches and translations of ancient medical sources in the Tibetan and classical Mongolian languages with the involvement of the material presented in modern works and dictionaries published by Tibetan and Mongolian practitioners, as well as Russian and foreign scientists. The glossary includes key tomes of Tibetan medicine, the title of medical text, name of author, and else. To some of these tomes, Mongolian and Sanskrit equivalents are given. Some complicated tomes that have ambiguous meaning are supplemented by brief explanation. All the tome and vocabulary explanations, especially related to the description of diseases, anatomical features, and else, are given within the framework of Tibetan and Mongolian traditional knowledge that confirms its age-old tradition and identity. The total number of entries in the database of the electronic glossary includes 3,695 entries. For 90% of them, the Mongolian equivalents were given, and for more than 400 tomes, Latin arcadances were established, allowing to identify these tomes with the help of modern scientific identifiers and reference books. This year glossary of Tibetan medicinal tomes is based on wiki technology. This is the address of this site: dictionary AMBT archive.ru. In conclusion, I want to say that this work of our institution is very important to promotion and reserve Tibetan medicine in Russia. And I can say that the base of traditional medicine of Russia, it is Tibetan medicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I think we will open question for the audience.
Oyuuna, thank you very much for your speech. It was very enthusiastic and hopeful, and it was very interesting to hear you. But I want to ask you one question. You said in one line, Mongolian, Buratian, Tibetan medicine, and so I want to. So you suppose that there is Buratian medicine, or it is branch of Tibetan medicine?
Nowadays, I can say that it's the Buryat branch of Tibetan medicine.
Okay, thank you. It was all.
In Russian teams there in your medicine, but it meets actually in India and Nepal and other countries. The basic meeting point for all of us, being Sowa Rigpa system of medicine or Tibetan system of medicine, is Guji, the fundamental textbook. Whoever follows the Guji fundamental textbook, we consider they are Sowa Rigpa practitioners. Likewise, in Russia, there is difference on what is your fundamental textbook.
The fundamental textbook is of course Atlas of Tibetan Medicine and Juchi, and our lamas in the early of 20th century, all of them can translate this from Tibetan language to Mongolian language to Buryat language, and our scholars study this textbook. Nowadays, our doctors, all of them study this Juchi and use base formulation from this textbook.
Tibetan medicine is very popular in Russia. So among all, 4 traditional medicines like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, what makes Tibetan medicine so famous in China? Not the Chinese medicine. No, in Russia. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you for your questions. I think that the main why it's so popular, because this medicine system, only this system, have many books, have many glossaries and terminological books. So our scientist, our lamas, can himself study this medical system, can provide this and use in practice. I think Russian folk healing systems haven't textbooks. Thank you.
I got a small question. Like in Tibetan medicine, that the origin of the system is from India. So we have a very close connection with medicine Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha, the same manifestation and practice. So it will be inspiring if you could share how the lamas practice. Is it very much similar with medicine Buddha, or is there any difference? Could you please
in Russia?
Explain in Russia?
Our doctors of official healthcare have academical education, and after that they have courses of Tibetan medicine, such as reflexology, pulse diagnosis, and manual therapy, moxotherapy, and acupuncture. These courses is not states; it's private. And we collaborate with our colleagues from Tibet, from Mongolia and Chinese to study these treatments. And lamas, they system of education just a little another. They of course study Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist terminology, and they studied medical treatments and practice only in datsans, only in their temples. They cannot to do practice in common clinics.
Oh, there is one question.
Sorry. So in your talk, you said that since 2011, if I'm not wrong, Russian Parliament doesn't recognize all the traditional medicines. So do you think in the future Russian traditional practitioners they will face some legal problems in the future? Do you think?
Licensed our treatments, our medicines, and we can do educational system of doctor of traditional medicine. I think some problems lost. Thank you.
If you look at Indian medical heritage, we have two types of medical tradition. One is codified classical system of medicine, which is included under Ayush system of medicine. And another stream is non-codified system of medicine, which is more over folk healing. Then you have also home remedies and all these kind of things, which is not kind of codified, which is not documented or written. Okay. Till now, Government of India has recognized the codified classical system of medicine. That includes Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Sowa Rigpa, homeopathy, yoga, naturopathy. Okay, the six system of medicines are recognized and it is regulated by government. Now another stream is that is folk healing, non-codified system of medicine, whether it is in household or community, it is not regulated, so government doesn't have any policy formulations. Likewise, I wanted to ask you, in Russia, you have same system like you have, in India, I told you there is 6 system of medicine, which is codified classical system of medicine. Which other system of medicine are prevalent in Russia? other than Sowa Rigpa Tibetan medicine?
Such as Tibetan medicine, I don't know, maybe it is Chinese medicine and Mongolian. Our systems is small, and I don't know what situation of them. But the similar problems of Sowa Rigpa, there are in other Chinese and Mongolian medicines. And I think today that if Ayurvedic system, Sowa Rigpa system can document it, your medicines and your treatments, it's very good for us, for Russian branch of Tibetan medicine, because we can study this source and use in our work to do our legal works.
Okay, sorry, I can make a small addition to Oyuuna's answer to your question, because now in Russia we have only one legal medical system. It's Western medical system, and it is in Russian healthcare system. All Chinese, Tibetan medicine, Sowa Rigpa, Ayurveda, and others, they are not legal. But we have special courses for our doctors. They called reflex therapy, Oyuuna told about it, manual therapy, osteopathy. And in that specializations, some methods of different traditional medical systems are in. So, for example, acupuncture, like the part of Chinese medicine, is in the reflexotherapy. And, for example, massage kunyem, for example, from Tibetan medicine, is in manual therapy. So, and in our country, it is one legal way to practice traditional medicine now.
Thank you very much. You know, in Russia, haven't the doctor of traditional medicine. It's very great, very big problem. Mm-hmm.
So once again, thank you so much, Ms. Yuno, for your very inspiring talk. On behalf of CCTM members, we would like to thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.